Good evening, everybody. Just a quick check now, just to make sure that everybody can see me and hear me and everything looks and sounds okay. If you could let me know in the comments, in the chat section, just so I know, that will be absolutely fantastic. And once we've done that, we can go through the welcome process and then we can get started. Good evening, Carl. Good to see you here, my young man. Okay, so we're all sounding and we're all looking good. That's great to hear. How's everybody's week been so far? Have you had a good week? I mean, it is what day is it today? Thursday? Thursday. Have you had a good week? Looking forward to the weekend? And for me, I can't wait for the weekend. Hopefully we'll have some nice weather here in the UK and actually get out and enjoy it. So where are you guys all from? What's it looking like? And are you looking forward to the weekend? Let me know in that chat section. So let's have a couple of good evenings first of all. So we've got Christopher. Good evening. Pascal. Good to see you. And we've got Paul, Charlie Bird, Enrico. We've got Carl. Well, we know our PA agent's going to be here. And we've got Christopher. I think I've said Christopher already. Ryan, Letharbo. I hope I said that okay. And we've got Lush Inbound Marketing. Hello to Greece as well. Steve, good to see you. Great you could make it. We've got Rita. We've got Rich. We've got Anthony. And we've got, who else do we have? Now, there's a couple of names I just I'm not even going to try to say. Anthony, good to see you. Brian, Benny. Good to see you, Benny. Good to see you here. Joanna, good to see you. And we've got Joy. We've got Cameron, Dennis, Will G. Well, it's fantastic to see so many of you already. It's really appreciated on my part. It's great to see these live streams are starting to actually get a nice audience every other week. So hope that we can keep that going. I hope I can find enough topics and things to keep you interested and keep you coming back for more. Now, speaking of topics, there's a couple of things I want to cover tonight. But before I do cover those, I just quickly want to ask you for some input. If you haven't already joined up to the Facebook group, you can find that by going to wptuts.co.uk/Facebook. Sign up completely free. It's a private group, so you have to sign up for it. Once you've done that, I'm going to create a thread in there once we finish this live stream, asking you what you'd like to see in the next live stream, which will be in 2 weeks' time. Now, obviously, there's a couple of things we need to keep in mind when you put down the kinds of things that you'd like to see. First of all, it's a live stream and not specifically a tutorial stream. So just bear that in mind. And also the kinds of topics that I can cover, I can't go into huge amounts of detail like I would in a deep dive tutorial or a dedicated tutorial. But if there are topics to do with WordPress, to do with page builders, to do with web design, to do with running a freelance business or a solo business in web design, let me know in there when I put that up to get your feedback so I can then take a look at the kinds of things that you're looking to have included. And then I can take a look at creating a live stream, maybe dedicated to a specific topic, or maybe will encompass a couple of topics. Now, regarding that, I think after the last live stream 2 weeks ago, I asked a couple of you to put up some designs that I wanted to use to critique in a positive way on the live streams. I'm not going to do that this week. I've got a couple of topics I want to cover, but that will be something that I'll be looking to integrate into this. We'll have a little segment that may be 5-10 minutes long, where I'll take 1 or 2 designs and we'll take a look at what I would recommend to improve them, maybe if they need any kind of improvement, and just give a general critique on what the kinds of things that you guys are actually creating using the tools that we cover on the WP Tuts channel and the kinds of things you like to use yourselves. So again, like I say, love you to get involved, because the whole point of these live streams is for you to be a big part of it, and a great way to have a two-way conversation where I can answer questions where possible in the chat, but also, like I say, if we have topics you want to see covered in the live stream, then I can do that in a little bit more detail and prepare for those kinds of things. So my answers will be a little bit more prepared, a little bit more detailed possibly. So if you like that idea, let me know in the chat. And also, like I say, just join up to the Facebook group, become part of that growing community, and get your input on what we cover in the live streams moving forward. Okay, so I can see there's a few more of you come in now, a couple of comments and so on. So as we always do, I'm going to go through a couple of these, say a couple of welcomes, take a look at what you guys are saying, and then we'll start on with the first topic that I want to cover. So what do we have? We've got Avi from Israel. Good evening. or afternoon or morning or whatever time it is with you guys. And we got Sebastian Perez. Question: Elementor has some dynamic menu using a mega menu that you can click a category and switch a post on the side using a slideshow. Is that a question or a statement? I'll come back to that one a little later. Has everybody updated Elementor yet? Absolutely not. If anybody has seen what's kind of going on in the Elementor community when it comes to the Facebook group, you'll see that even though updates have been rolled up, and I think we are up to something like 3.07 right now, and I think the last live stream we were 3.03 and 3.04 went live during that live stream. Well, there seems to be still a lot of bugs and a lot of things that are still causing problems, whether that's related to Elementor itself or Elementor and a conflict with maybe a plugin that's hasn't been updated yet to keep up to date with what's going on with Elementor. I don't know, but for me, I'm not updating yet until most of these things are back on track and we can be sure that we've got a pretty stable version of Elementor. But again, you let me know, are you updating your Elementor sites right now, or are you holding back, like myself, to make sure that the dust can settle before you go to the time and effort of installing it and then potentially finding you could have problems? If it's on a client site, time is money, as we all know, and that's not a good thing if you are fault finding for something that's just literally an update. So let me know again in the chat, what are your thoughts? Have you updated? Are you going to update? Or are you still holding off until we get more confirmation that we've got a very stable version of both Elementor Free and Pro? Okay, so let's have a little look what else we got. We've got Carl. Where's my beer? I'm actually out of beers. Unfortunately, I'm on the lemonade tonight, but it is a Coors pint glass. So, I mean, I am technically halfway there. So, Carl, you have to raise a glass for me, young man, and enjoy it. Next week, the week after we do the next live stream, I will make sure I have a couple of beers and try to stay sober while doing the live stream. But you enjoy your beer, and anybody else having a drink doing this live stream, please do enjoy what you're drinking. Okay, so let's have a little look-see. So, Carl, I've updated Elementor and Pro to the latest with no issues as of yet, but still monitoring on staging and also new site. Yeah, I think that's one of those areas that we have to be cognizant of, is the fact that you can update something, and on a simple site, it's very easy to check, is everything working okay? But more complex sites, I don't necessarily mean just ones with lots of plugins, just sites that can be quite large. To be able to check everything out could be quite difficult to do, and obviously, you know, that, like I say, time is money. If it's a client site, the last thing you want to do is roll an update out, have a cursory glance over 2 or 3 pages, everything looks okay, and you carry on with your day. Then you get that phone call off a really unhappy client saying, my site is broken, and then you've got to go and find out what to do. Always have a backup in place. We've covered this in previous live streams. Always, always, always backup before you do anything, and a staging site just to make sure you can test it out as much as is humanly possible. But good to see that some of you are actually updating to Elementor 3. whatever, Pro and Free, and not having any issues. So fingers crossed, a lot of people are going to have a smooth ride now, updating it, you know, and moving forward. Hopefully this will allow 3. so-and-so to start to gain some traction, and we get closer towards 3.1, and some of the good things that I've heard are going to be included in that version of Elementor. But anyway, like I say, anybody else updated? Would like to hear me speaking about Oxygen? Stay with me until we get through a little later into this particular live stream, because I'm going to talk about Oxygen a little bit there. And I do want to have some feedback and input from everybody that's on the live stream, and also anybody who's watching the replay of the live stream. You know, I'd love you to get involved. This is to people that are watching this now when it's not live, it's the replay. Do get involved. Do put your comments in the comment section. I do check those out. I do take notice of what's going on there. And again, the same thing applies. If you're not a member of the WP Tuts Facebook group, hop on over, join up, get involved in future live streams. And if you can make it, hopefully your questions will get answered and topics get covered. Okay. Anthony T, do you know how to create a glossary with Elementor and Crocoblock's Jet Engine to easily recreate what some plugins offer? Not off the top of my head, I would have to take a look at that kind of thing, but I'm definitely pushing back into some more of the dynamic content, which is something that I've kind of been a bit lax on over the last couple of months. So yesterday was the first release of some short topics on ACF, I'm going to be doing the same thing with Jet Engine. I've just kind of been waiting when it comes to Jet Engine to let the dust settle with Elementor before I go back and take a look at finishing off some of the content that I've got to create, the sponsored content, but also just taking a look at other content that I particularly want to cover on Jet Engine and Jet Smart Filters and Jet Search and so on. But while this real sort of state of issue going on with Elementor, it's really more time consuming, more of a problem to try to get everything working. And then you don't really know, is it a plugin issue? Is it Elementor issue? Is it a theme issue? So I'm waiting for that dust to settle before I get stuck back into things like Jet Engine with any real sort of time and effort involvement. Hope you guys understand that and realize why I'm doing it and the reasons for it. Paul, thank you very much for your super chat. That is incredibly, very much appreciated. Your support is amazing as always. So thank you very much, Paul. Okay, so Alan Jacobs, updates all working okay for you. Again, that's really good to hear. Okay. Will G have updated WordPress and Elementor this week, and now my site has a fatal error. Thank God I was a staging site and back. Yeah, I mean, that just goes to show that you can have all the best intentions in the world, but the problem comes in that because we've had WordPress 5.5, which is now 5.51, and Elementor 3, that just opens up a can of worms, I think, especially with some of the third-party developers that are plugging into the API that's part of Elementor and Elementor Pro. They're not necessarily updating at the same pace that Elementor is or has, and this could lead to problems as well. So I think it's just the whole ecosystem at the moment is in a real state of disarray because so many updates came out at the same time, and they were big updates. So maybe Elementor would have been better, but wiser to have waited a little bit and rolled it out once the sort of dust has settled with the 5.5 update of WordPress itself. But, hindsight is always 2020. We just got to go with what we've been given and decide what we want to do and how we want to play our cards. So as we can see, some people are having time with no problems. Others are having issues with this sort of update being rolled out. So hopefully, like I say, that's something that you can make sure that you cover yourself with backups and staging sites and so on. Now, speaking of backups and staging sites and so on, I just seen a little sort of thing pop up in the chats then to do with the auto backups. Now, did anybody see the video tutorial that I released? I think it was earlier this week, which was how to globally disable that with just a couple of edits to your theme file and your functions PHP file. If you did, have you implemented this? Or are you just quite happy to do this on a sort of plugin by plugin, theme, core, whatever basis? Or is this something you take a look at integrating and controlling the whole update process in a much easier fashion, using something like main WP or managed WP like I've covered in the past? Let me know if you've taken a look at that video and if that's something you would consider implementing yourselves. Okay, we're going to ask one or two questions. And then I'm going to crack on with the topics that I want to cover in this particular video or this live stream. Okay, so what do we have then? Rich Ward, updated to Elementor 3.07 on staging, which has fixed a major issue I had with Elementor 3. I've been updating and reporting issues to hopefully help them become bug-free sooner. Well, thanks for your input, Rich, because I think it's people like yourself, which you are willing to bug report. And hopefully, Elementor developers are taking on board what's being said, the issues, and then they're taking a look at ways to fix it. But we need more people like you, Rich, that will feedback and say what isn't working, what's causing the problem, and give them the tools they need to recreate that problem and hopefully squash those bugs sooner rather than later. So thumbs up to you, Rich. Good for that. Okay, so one more. What do we have? WooCommerce notifications, how to add styles. Good question. I haven't looked into it. I'd have to take a look at that in a little bit more detail. Social Fire. Hey, nice to catch you live. Thanks for your amazing videos. Thank you for taking the time to come and join us live. It's great to see new faces and new names popping up in the live stream. So please, I hope you enjoy it and come back on a regular basis when we actually do these. Okay, so I wanted to quickly go over now some of the topics that I want to cover. Steve, thank you very much for your super chat. You are an absolute star. Thank you very much. Okay, so bear with me. I'm going to have a quick look at what I want to cover today. Now, I'm going to switch over my screen a second, and we're going to take a look at something. So this is about a plugin, or I can't call it a plugin, really. It's more of a toolkit, and you'll see why I say that in a moment, that allows you to configure and fine-tune parts of Elementor and also parts of your setup. Now, if you've never heard of it, it's a plugin called Toolkit for Elementor. And I'm going to take you quickly through some of the things that I like about this. And I've been talking to Charles, who's the main coder behind this plugin, and he might be the only coder. I'm not sure if it's just him or there's a couple of people involved. But this is version 1.04, and this has been out for a little while with some sort of interim fixes and things like that and sort of features. But 1.1 is due to come out, I believe, in the next few days. And with that, there are some nice updates. And I will be taking a look at that plugin in more detail when I get a copy of that to test it out. But I wanted to show you this today because I think if you are working with Elementor and you're using things to, like auto-optimize and things like that, where you sort of go through and you'll minify your CSS and things, all those things that we do to speed up our WordPress websites, especially when using a page builder, this may be something that's of interest to you. So it does quite a few different things. So I'm going to hop over to the dashboard. And I'm going to show you, ignore these error messages because I always seem to get these whenever I update anything on here. But what I want to do is I want to show you what it does. So we've got Toolkit for Elementor. And inside there, we've got a couple of different options. You've got your booster, which is where you can go through and you can configure certain parts of your server, things like gzip and stuff like that. You can test through GTmetrix directly inside this interface. You can do things like lazy load and, remove and disable some of the things that you may not need as part of WordPress itself. And this is quite a nice way of working because you're not so reliant upon another plugin then like auto-optimize and so on. You do get sort of decent results. And I know that Charles is really sort of trying his best to create an environment where tweaking and configuring everything is actually a lot easier than we may have had in the past. Now, on top of that, like I say, you've got server tweaks, and you've got your unload and your widget manager and so on. So if we take a look quickly at the widget manager, this is something I think will be interesting to some of you. You can see we've got 3 tabs. We've got the Elementor widgets, the WordPress widgets, and the WordPress dashboard widgets. So what you can do is you can dequeue and hide various different Elementor widgets. So if you don't want to have these show up inside the dashboard, now this, I'm not going to go into the technical aspect of this. Charles did mention it to me, and maybe I'll take a look at how this is all going to work later on when version 1.1 comes out. I don't think there's going to be a massive impact on making things lighter and quicker from the front-end point of view. Not a massively noticeable difference anyway. But it will streamline the interface if you don't use a lot of these options. And the same kind of thing goes for the WordPress widgets. So your archives, custom HTML, all those kinds of things, you can disable those. And also the dashboard. So if you want to create a custom dashboard, something I've covered in the past in a lot of detail, you can use this plugin to do lots of other things, as well as remove those horrible, really annoying things that you see whenever you log in to WordPress itself. So quite cool to see those things in there. There's some other things, and I've covered the themeless option in its own dedicated video from quite a while back, and I will probably come back and show you that again in a little bit more detail once version 1.1 comes out. But it basically means that you can disable WordPress's requirement to have a theme installed at all. So you can remove that completely, and then you can just focus only on using the theme builder that's part of Elementor Pro. So there's some benefits to doing that. You're not having any kind of theme overriding anything on your site. And you should find that the front end will be a little bit quicker because that reliance for the theme to be just loaded in will be removed. How much of a difference? I don't know. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to show you the GTmetrix kind of thing, because I think this would be useful for a lot of people. As you can see, I've got a site installed, and this is just basically an Astra site. It's one of the starter sites. So it is a full site. There's half a dozen pages, 8 pages, something like that on there. So it's been partially optimized. That's one of the good things about the Astra starter themes. They are well optimized. You can see what we're starting off with is a page speed of 96 and a Y slow of 88%. Those things are useful, but they're not the be all and end all. And the same goes for load time. If you've ever used GTmetrix, and if you see any of my videos where I cover benchmarking sites, I always tell you to basically take the load time with a pinch of salt, because it's one of those things that while it's nice to see it there, you can run the test 10 times and you'll get a different result pretty much every time. There's so many variables in play that it's not really a good indication of what is actually going on. What is more important, though, the page size, and the requests, because the smaller and the fewer of those that you can get, then you should have a faster loading site by its very nature, providing you're on a good server that's well optimized, that has speed as part of it, and ideally if it's a WordPress-based server. So something like SiteGround, something like Cloudways, those kinds of things, they should be a great starting point that give you access to a good WordPress platform. What I want to do is going to run through this now and just show you the options we have, and you can see some of the changes you can make. And then I'm going to come back to you to get some feedback on what you think of this, if you've tried it and all those kinds of things. So we have 5 different options on the left-hand side. If you go to minification, I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, are going to be familiar with what minification is. All it really means is it strips out the extra spaces, the line breaks and so on in your HTML, your CSS, and those kinds of things to make the file sizes smaller. Does it make a massive impact? Not really, but it does make an impact. It does have an improvement because those extra characters all include bits and bytes, and therefore by removing them, you will reduce the file sizes. Combining CSS, for example, or combining JavaScript, you may have 3 or 4 different CSS files, multiple different JavaScript files for various different reasons, depending upon the theme and tools you're using and so on. You can combine those into one just to make sure that you only have to do one load as opposed to potentially several loads, which again then will reduce the amount of requests that you make into the server. And like I said, the fewer requests you make, the faster your site should load. So what you can do is you can just check these options, save and apply those tweaks, and we're done. We're done with those options. Now, whenever you're doing anything like this, if you see my videos on like WP Rocket and Bunny CDN that I released a couple of weeks back, you'll know that whenever you're working with anything like this, you need to test things out every single time. So when you make those changes, you want to go over to your site, clear any caches, reload it, make sure everything is loading correctly, especially when it comes to minifying CSS and JavaScript, because they can cause issues. So bear that in mind. I've already run those tests and everything did come out earlier on perfectly fine. So I'm not going to worry about it right now, but I just want to make you aware of that. Lazy load, excuse me. Now with WordPress 5.5, I believe they brought their own lazy load as part of it. And version 1.1 of Toolkit for Elementor will give you the option to override the WordPress option. At the moment, I'm not sure if it's doing that or whether it's kind of would combine the two together. So I'm going to check both of those because it's not going to hurt anything when I'm testing this out. I will do the save and apply tweaks again. Server tweaks. This is where you can do various different things to do with the server itself. So things like gzip compression, you can enable that, which then should on the fly compress your files and make things just quicker to load, providing gzip is supported by your particular server. And most modern servers should apply that option as part of it. But if you're having a problem, you're not sure, obviously contact your hosting company just to check it out. So again, you've got all the options just to check what you want. If you want to take a look at learning about gzip, learning about keep alive conditions and so on, there's help links there. So you can check that out to get an idea of exactly what any of these particular options mean. So I'm going to save and apply those. I'm going to jump over to the unload WP bloat. Now, if you've ever used a tool like iThemes Security, or you've used WP Rocket or WP Optimize and things like that, these settings are going to be familiar to you. And you may find that if you used a tool like Toolkit for Elementor on a site that's not a massive site, I don't know how well it would fare on a bigger site. I don't know. I'd have to test that out. But this might do away with the need to have some kind of optimization tool installed separately, like Auto Optimize, like WP Rocket, and so on. So it's worth testing this out to see what kind of results you get. What we're going to do is we're going to disable all of these options because I don't need any of those. And we're going to do, that's it. So I've done all the options I need. I'm not going to worry about the widget manager. You could obviously, like I say, go in there and edit that as well, but I'm going to leave that as it is. And come back to the GT metrics and going to set this up to be local to me. So I'm going to set this up to be London, UK, and we're going to set it to Chrome desktop. So the figures we've got at the moment, 1.25 megabytes and 54 requests. Let's run that performance and take a look at what that does. Now I'm going to let that run in the background, and I'm going to come back onto full screen a second. And then while that's running, I'm going to just take a look at what you guys are saying. David Stamper, thank you very much for that super chat. You are an absolute star as well. Your support, all of you support, whether that's financial support, super chat support, or just turning up, It is all very much appreciated by myself. So please keep on doing that and keep spreading the word about the live streams, because the more of us we can get together, the better conversation we can have. I absolutely love doing these live streams. So if we get enough people interested and enough topics to cover, maybe I'll take a look at doing them on a weekly basis as opposed to every other week. Okay, so have any of you actually tried Toolkit for Elementor? Manuel, I can see you're checking it out, so that's good to see. Carl, what do we have? Will Toolkit interfere with WP-Rocket CSS Minify? Looks like it will be conflict with many of WP-Rocket's features. I can't say for definite it would conflict with them, but I think if you're going to use WP-Rocket for that aspect, then there's no point in using the same inside the toolkit, one or the other, because all you're doing is doubling up on the same thing. So just choose which one you prefer to do it in, and then set those inside that particular plugin, whichever your preference is. Other than that, it should work fine. I can check it out. So what I'll do is I'll wait for version 1.1 to be released, let's say in the next day or so, and I'll test that out with my WP-Rocket account, and I'll see if we have any conflicts there, if there's any issues when you combine it on both sides, just to see what happens. And if that's interesting, let me know, and I can sort of post my results and let you know. Okay, so we've got Steve Pro, Toolkit, $79 unlimited a year license, lifetime $149. One of those things that I think if you see the tools inside there that you think are going to be useful for you, it's worth checking out. I'm not endorsing it. I just had that sent to me through by Charles probably a year, 18 months ago, and I haven't looked at it since. But I've been speaking to him the last couple of days, and he's sort of telling me what the new updates are. And they sound quite interesting. There's some quite cool things coming to do with WooCommerce as well, where you can just go into the toolkit, check one box, and it will then automatically unload any of the WooCommerce JavaScript, anything to do with WooCommerce like that, from any pages that are not WooCommerce related. So if you've ever used a tool, I can't think of the name off the top of my head, which allows you to unload scripts on pages that are not using them. I mean, WooCommerce is probably one of the biggest culprits for doing something like this. This would kind of do it in one checkbox, which could speed up the whole process of doing something like that. So I think what Charles is doing is he's definitely taking various different parts from various different plugins and creating a unified toolkit with the most common features that most of us would probably want to use. Like I said, I'm not endorsing this in the slightest. I'm just saying, just showing you the kind of things that you can kind of do with it. And just say that I think it looks interesting. There's definitely potential there, I think, as it grows and expands. I know he's got some exciting plans for version 2 and beyond. So I'm excited to see what he kind of does with that and how that plays out. But other than that, let's just jump back over and take a look at the results. Okay. So there we go. We've got 97 and 93. So the Y slow speed has definitely improved from 88 to 93. Our load time, which, like I say, don't take too much notice of that because it is so volatile. It's really not worth worrying about because it's not a perfect score by any stretch. But what we are seeing, page size of 981 kilobytes, which is about, what, a 300K saving? I think it's 1.29. Let's have a little look at the bottom. That doesn't tell me on there. And we've got 18 requests, down from 50-odd requests. So just by using that, there's a considerable reduction in requests, which we know is important. Page size has dropped down, but like I say, this was already pretty well optimized, but any saving is a positive. And that's doing things like combining those files and so on. So for me, like I say, this just means it's one location, one plugin that does a couple of other things that I think are useful. I can test things out, I can tweak things, and I can do it all inside the one interface. So I think it's something that's definitely interesting to take a look at. I'll quickly talk about some of the other things they've got in here, but I don't want to go too much detail. This was more the thing I wanted to show you, which is the booster option. Syncer, I'm not going to enable that because you've got to do it with other sites that have this installed on. What it does is it's a way of linking your sites together, and then any templates that are part of Elementor on any other site that's linked through this syncer option as part of Toolkit for Elementor, you can immediately get access to those template files and then pull them onto the site that you're currently viewing it on. So this site, if I had 3 other sites with templates on, Elementor templates, like for example, headers and footers, or I might have a dashboard template or something, I could use this then to just pull that from there. And I could put it from multiple different sites if I want to. So I could link this to all my sites, pick and choose which template files I wanted, pull them down, then disable the syncer. And I've got those in this site then. So you could very easily create your own custom repository. There's a site that doesn't have anything other than a collection of all of your templates in that you could link to, or you could just pull them from other sites that you have and you've enabled the syncer on. So I think quite a cool feature. Doesn't require a cloud membership, doesn't store them anywhere other than on your own websites, which for a lot of people is a nice thing. It removes that requirement for cloud service. Quite cool. Themeless, like I say, disables the need for WordPress having a theme. It kind of satisfies that with no theme being active at all. Take a look if that's something you think would be useful. And then we've got the toolbox. Now, this is very similar to like code snippets, but in a much simpler fashion. You can insert code into your header, you can insert it into the body, and you can insert it into the footer. So, you know, your things like your Google Pixel, your Google and your Facebook pixels, you could drop that into the body, your header, you know, your Google Analytics code and stuff like that. That's all standard affair, I think. But 1.1 has another feature which will allow you then to inject code into the admin of your dashboard. So you could, if you wanted to, have things like chat messages inside this. If you had multiple users and you wanted to give them a chat option, excuse me, to chat with you directly, for example, but only on the dashboard of their WordPress website, you could integrate that in by using that function, which is quite cool. I quite like that idea. Pretty nifty. And you know, basically that's the plugin that I wanted to show you, and some of the features that I wanted to show you in this. So hopefully that's kind of piqued your interest in what you could do with it. But what do you think? Have you tested this? Have you looked at it? Have you seen it before? Has this piqued your interest? Let me know in the chat. And I'm going to take a look in the chat right now once I've had a drink. Because whenever I do these live chats, my throat dries out quite quickly. Okay, what do we have? Manuel, Paul, have you ever checked performance difference between Hello Theme and Themeless option from Toolkit for Elementor? I haven't, but I did test things out when I looked at this probably about 18 months ago, but I think that was pre-version 1. But I haven't done a comparison. But when version 1.1 comes out, I might well do just that. So again, let me know if you would find something like this interesting. I don't think it's going to make a massive impact because, I mean, Hello itself, by its very nature, is pretty lightweight. So while it might have a little bit of an improvement, I don't think it's going to be a night and day improvement. But what this does is, by removing that theme, then nothing to do with a theme can override anything you want to do inside Elementor. I think if you're combining that with the Elementor 3.0 theme styles and the global colors and fonts and so on, could give you a completely fresh, clean palette to work with, which could be quite cool. But like I say, if you're interested, let me know in the comments or in the chat, whichever, and I'll take a look at testing that out. Okay, what else do we have? Can you also use the toolkit to manage settings per page? I don't believe so at this point. I think it is a global setting. You're kind of globally editing parts of your site or globally tweaking parts of the server setup for your site. So I don't believe you can do a page by page yet. That might be something they're looking at in future versions of it, but for now, I don't really know if they're going to be doing something like that. Carl Garside, sorry, Steve Pro. Ability to turn off widgets you're not using Elementor would be good. I agree. I've covered this on a different video where I took a look at a tool that allowed you to do something like that. It didn't unload a lot of the code, or actually didn't unload any of the code. It was literally just a visual change in the back end of the dashboard, which just streamlined your Elementor interface. Didn't have any effect, any impact on the front end of the site. So I'd be interested to see if there's any difference. And again, it's one of those things that if you're interested in me testing these out, then I can install this, I'll test it out, disable a pile of things, run a test before and after, and see if there's any noticeable difference on the front end of the site. Okay, William Ricardo, Brazil. Hello, Brazil. Yeah, Carl Garside. I wish Elementor would also, some widgets I would never use. This brings me back to my wish list of Elementor, which takes me back to, I think it was the first live stream we did, where I talked about what I would love to have seen would have been Elementor being developed in a much more modular fashion. There would have been Elementor core, which would have been by its very nature just the core functionality. So, you know, the Elementor builder itself, sans widgets, as it is now, the theme builder, the styling, and all those kinds of things. But then the widgets, the extra widgets, you know, things that are not integral to actually building a basic page, they were plugged in as a separate Elementor toolkit, should we call it, that was just plugged in via the API, because Elementor made an API so third-party developers could plug in and add new features in. To me, it would have made sense, or it does now, looking back at it, that they'd employed the same technology and the same principle to create the core Elementor and then just plug in the extra things. So things like Lottie animations and all those kinds of things, which lots of us don't really care about, they would have been an additional plugin, which you could then chosen to plug into your Elementor core and then enable and disable, like you can with so many other third-party plugins for Elementor, the features that you did and didn't want to use. That, I think, would have been a fantastic way of making Elementor much more modular, which would then help to cut down on a lot of the bloat that you have inherently by having to load all these scripts in, all the CSS indicator for all these different widgets. That's just my take. I would have loved to have seen something like this. Okay, so what else do we have? Steve Pro, Diet Coke for me. We're all teetotal tonight then, except for Carl. Say nothing. Okay, so Joanna, it seems really useful. There are other options. I use Hello a lot. Is there a way to control photo resizing in a similar way? Image resizing is one of those things that I will always say the same thing. And I assume you mean resizing as in dimensions, not as in file size, as in compressing it. If it's dimensions, I would always say, and I say this to my clients, resize your images before you upload them. Because when you let the server try to do it via WordPress and any plugin, puts a huge strain on shared hosting. So if you're not on, you know, sort of a virtual private server and you don't have tons of resources, it can massively impact the speed of the server. It'll also potentially have huge amounts of space being used up when it's running like the image magic routine and what have you as it goes on in the background. And I've noticed with a couple of my clients, when they're doing this with larger galleries, it can sometimes push them way over their quota very, very quickly. And then I've got to go into the temporary folder as part of the server, and I've got to delete all the image magic files, the temporary files, where they're trying to resize the images and create all the thumbnails and so on. So generally, that's the way I would work it, get them to resize before they upload. If it's compression side of things you're talking about, I personally like Short Pixel, but there's, I think WP Compress is another good option. There are quite a few different ones on there. I think Imagify is a good free option, which will just sort of try to compress them on the upload. You can do that. There are lots of options out there, but I would always say resize before you upload. And then if you need to do compression when you've uploaded, that's not quite so bad. But ideally, you do all your uploading, you do all your resizing, your compressing and everything before you upload images. That's the best way. Batch process them with something like Adobe, I can't think of the name of it, the sort of thing that comes with Bridge, Adobe Bridge. That'll batch process them for you. Hope that answers the question. Okay, I prefer the Page Builder Framework theme over Hello, David Stamper. Page Builder Framework is a cracking theme, and David, the guy behind it, or the key guy behind it, very nice man and very open to suggestions and great with support. So yeah, I think you are bang on there. That's a very good option. For me, I just like Hello because it means that I don't have any reliance upon a theme whatsoever these days. I can just build what I want. And you know, if you're happy doing that, that to me is the great way of doing it. But if you want the features that a theme can bring with it, Page Builder Framework is a very good option. Okay, what have we got? TinyPNG is excellent. TinyPNG is very, very good. And if you use Photoshop, you can, for about $20 or $25, I think it is, you can get a plugin for Photoshop that takes TinyPNG or TinyJPEG, whichever one you want to use, the same thing, and integrates that into Photoshop so you can run it directly from Photoshop. So you could, I believe, theoretically batch process images through TinyPNG inside Photoshop if you buy that plugin to go with it. Worth checking out if you're a Photoshop user and you don't want to have to upload, then download your files when you want to compress them using a tool like TinyPNG. No problem, Joanna. I hope that helped. Okay, so what else do we have? Steve Pro, bought Short Pixel after your review. Tut. Okay, excellent for the money. Yeah, it is. I grabbed 2 deals, I believe, over on AppSumo for it, probably a year, 2 years ago, just for the fact that I can set up sub accounts, which I can then put the API in, which is sub account specific, to allow my clients to access this on their sites, and then I can control exactly how many credits they have out of my monthly credit allowance, which is a good way of giving access and reducing my stress, because it's being optimized and compressed in the background by Short Pixel, which does it on the server, I believe, taking the strain off your own server with your site on, and it just means that I can do that without having to worry about it. And then if I've got a client that uses more credits one month, I can just quickly up their allowance. It's a good way of working, and it's a good tool. So I would definitely say to check out Short Pixel. It's a very good option. Okay. Okay. Optimal. I still haven't tried Optimal. I mean, how many of you are using that? I mean, have you compared it to something like Short Pixel? Is it night and day, or is it very similar, but it's just cheaper, quicker, more options? What is it you like about Optimal? Okay, Pascal, if you don't have Photoshop, you can use GIMP to compress images. It's free. You can indeed. And you could also use things like Pixlr X, which is free to use online. You don't need an account with that, and you can do a lot of things inside there. Photopea is another good one that has the ability as well, I believe, to use Photoshop Actions. So if you use Photoshop, is it Photoshop Actions, or is it Smart Objects? No, I think Smart Objects. If you use Smart Objects as part of Photoshop and you want to have access to the same kind of facilities, I believe Photopea allows you to work with Smart Objects from Photoshop files. So another option to check it out. Okay, what do we have? Affinity Photo is what I use now, much cheaper than Photoshop, and does everything. I'm with you on that one. I bought the entire suite for the PC and also for the iPad. They were on offer when we had the beginning of this health issue across the world, and they put it at 50% off, which made it about £25, probably about $30 per application, which, if you ask me, was an absolute steal and worth every single penny or cent or dollar or whatever. Okay. Helpful contents. Please make videos how to make website faster, especially manage or solve waterfall issues. Gayan, if you take a look on the channel, I did a couple of videos on that where I tested out some of the main optimization plugins, things like WP Rocket, WP Optimize. So check the channel out. That was a couple of weeks ago, so you can see how they fared against each other. And I also did a video probably about 2 or 3 weeks ago, which is called Making WordPress Faster, which shows you how to use WP Rocket alongside Bunny CDN and a couple of other options to drastically speed up the whole website. But obviously, taking all those things out of the equation, you still need to start off with very good hosting that is optimized, and that's something that generally doesn't come cheap. So look into a good host before you start optimizing anything to do with WordPress, because that will ultimately make your life easier because you have solid foundations to start your website on. Okay. Right, next topic. Are we looking for time? Wow, we're 45 minutes in already and I've covered one topic. Either you guys need to stop talking so much or I do. Probably me. Okay, so the next thing I want to take a look at is, let me just go and take a look at my notes a second. Okay. Okay, so getting back to ACF. I want to cover this just very, very quickly, and then we're going to move on and talk about Oxygen. ACF is something, as you know, that is key to my channel. And over the last couple of months, where we've had this lockdown, it's been a little difficult to focus on creating ACF-based content, along with all the other things that I've had to do business-wise and so on. But as of yesterday, I intend to start releasing more tutorials again on ACF, on dynamic content. Yes, there will be Jet Engine tutorials as well before anybody asks me, so don't worry, there will be Jet Engine tutorials. And I just want to reassure anybody that's actually following the channel and they came here for the ACF-based tutorials, for these deep dive tutorials, for these more advanced tutorials, they will be coming back over the next couple of weeks. I'm going to be focusing on some useful little tools. Released one yesterday, which just improves the search facility that's part of WordPress, which means that if you've ever used ACF, you'll know that your meta fields that are created with ACF are not searched inside WordPress's normal search function. This little plugin, this ACF Better Search, you just install it, configure a few options inside there, and that will then allow you to search against those new meta fields. That's one of the first things I want to cover. I've got some other things that I'm going to cover that will show you like enhancements to the ACF interface, making it a better place for you to work in. And also if you use this for customers and clients, how to get a better environment for them to work in and expand the tool set that you have there. Most of these are going to be free options, these sort of short tutorial things, these little plugins. We will then be moving on to creating and combining various different things to create a much more focused dashboard experience, but also expanding what we can do with the front end of WordPress and Elementor and so on. Which kind of leads me on to the next thing I want to talk about, which is Oxygen. Now, before I start talking about Oxygen, how many of you have used it? How many of you are interested in it? And how many of you would like to see content created on it? Let me know in the chat now. I want to gauge sort of interest on this because I've toyed with it for a while. I get asked by a lot of people to create content on it. But I don't know. I'm in two minds about it because it means I've got to go back and learn how to use that software. And I have no objection to doing that. I absolutely enjoy doing that kind of thing. But I want to do it if people are actually interested in it. Excuse me. So, Carl, I can see, don't hold back on this one now, mate. You tell me exactly how you feel. Tried it, hated it. Don't say nothing. Okay. Paul, I say stay focused on Elementor. I have no reason to move away from Elementor. So don't think that any other tools that I look at covering, that I will look at them and favor them over something like Elementor. Elementor still builds up the biggest core of what I do when it comes to things like ACF pods, Jet Engine, and those kinds of things. But I also don't want to be pigeonholed into only covering that particular platform. There are other ones there. Elementor is not going to be the number one forever. There are going to be other tools that come along that will give us things that we don't get in Elementor. Just lots of different reasons. So I'd always say be careful just focusing on one specific tool. Putting blinkers on, look at the other options or not looking at the other options out there can be really detrimental to you if you're doing this for a business. If you're doing it for pleasure or doing it for yourself, knock yourself out. Go with whatever you think is the best option. Excuse me. Pascal, interested in Oxygen to open up options? Yep. Pietro, very interested in Oxygen. I bought it in testing local with Flywheel. It's fantastic for advanced users. This is the thing I think a lot of people are put off by when it comes to looking at Oxygen. One, I really think they need to get a UI or UX designer in to take a look at that interface. While it may be functional, in my opinion, it looks absolutely awful. Really needs to be brought up to date, freshened up, made more modern, clearer. I think that would make a massive difference to the way that people perceive it, because I think one of the perceptions that I think is out there is when you look at a tool like Oxygen, it looks very, very dated, and therefore people will probably look at it and think, well, that's not going to be very good because it looks like it's out of date already. Wrong perception, but I think they're not doing themselves any favors by doing that and really not focusing on making the UI or the UX a much better looking, much fresher, much more modern kind of place to be. My, sort of 2 pence worth, that's my opinion. Okay. Josh, I'd pass on Oxygen. I feel a distaste for Elementor lately, but I think we've all invested too much time into learning Elementor, and that's way too much to start over. I don't have distaste for Elementor. If that's come across in any of my videos, that's my fault for the way that I've actually maybe spoken about it. I still think Elementor is an absolutely amazing platform for building websites. My problem with it is that I don't like all the bells and whistles that are being added onto it while not fleshing out a lot of the other features. I think this is the kind of point that I've tried to make whenever I've given any kind of critical look at Elementor itself. The tool is brilliant. The tool is, it allows us to do things that 3 years ago we couldn't have done without hand coding and it's pushed a lot of page builders way further than they ever would have done without it. But the problem, like I say, is that I don't really think that Elementor are necessarily listening to their user base. I think they are adding just bells and whistles on in favor of taking a look at the core things that I think should be fully featured before they're even released. That's not distaste for it. That's just frustration, I think. That's probably what's coming across, is my frustration that a tool that is potentially so good is being hampered by not being developed fully in areas that I think are more important than adding things like, and I keep referring to it, Lottie animations and those kinds of things, because I don't think they're important. I really don't. Leave that to the third-party sort of plugin developers to add these extra little bells and whistles on, and focus on creating a solid platform that has the key tools that we need to build amazing websites. And then we can sprinkle all the little magical bits afterwards with other tools or coding it ourselves. That's my opinion on it. So if you ever think that I have distaste for Elementor, that's my problem for coming across incorrectly in how I talk about it. Okay, what else do we have? I've heard of Oxygen but never tried it. Would be interested to see how it works. Might be good if you did a comparison between Oxygen and Elementor. That is actually on the cards. I intend to do a couple of comparisons between different tools. Oxygen is not really geared towards beginners. You need to have an understanding of, first of all, how a website is made up. No. You can still do some beginner things in there, but if you want to, use Oxygen for any real purpose, then you're going to go beyond those basics very quickly. And I think it gives you a lot more control than Elementor gives you. But with that comes more complexity in the way that you have to build things, and you have to have a better understanding. So if you come from a development background, or you come from working with tools like Dreamweaver, something like that, you will probably feel at home a lot quicker with something like Oxygen over something like Brizy, Elementor, Divi, something like that, which is much more visual in the way that you would build things. It's just rewiring your brain coming from a tool like Elementor to move it over to how Oxygen would work. Okay, what else do we have? Carl, HTML, CSS via Notepad is what I used to use. Oxygen would have been beneficial to me. That was over 10 years ago. See, now, if they updated the interface, you might be thinking that was only 7 years ago. Anyway, I'm just taking the mick. Elementor's power is its design, UI, and data management, and they dropped the ball on the data side. It only reminds me of Visual Basic 6, but for the web, Pascal. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I'm coming from, where I say that I would rather see less bells and whistles and more focus on the core functions. How long did it take them to add in something like dynamic data to charts? What are they called? I can't think of the name, the word I'm looking for. But it was like you could do dynamic title, you could do dynamic labels, but you couldn't do dynamic data, the actual values. So it was completely useless, and this is where my beef kind of comes in with it, which my frustration it kind of comes in, is that we have this amazing tool that's being hampered, like I say earlier on, that they're putting out half a tool, half a feature, and then you have to wait 18 months for the other half of it to come out. And in that time, it's kind of like, well, there's been other things added on that have been half-baked, and another thing that's been added on that's been half-baked. And that to me just really, really frustrates me, because it could be so much more powerful than it is if they focus on that. We'd have less reliance upon so many third-party plugins, conditions, conditional logic. I've talked about all these things in my perfect Elementor. These are all things that I would love to see in Elementor, because these are all the things that I think would elevate it so far above the competition that it would be incredibly difficult for any other company to come along and supersede what Elementor are doing. But I think they are hampering themselves a little bit by always focusing on the new, and not focusing on fleshing out those features. But that's it. I'm not going to talk any more about it, because I think I've covered this in its own dedicated video. We've covered it quite a bit now. But that's my thought. Okay, what else do we have? The huge question is not Elementor or something else, but how to improve Elementor's efficiency. Focus on the core functionality and stop adding silly little things in that don't really matter to probably 75% of its user base. That's what I would say. Okay, so that's what I want to cover on Oxygen. I'll take a look at the comments and things a little bit later on to sort of gauge your feedback. But again, if you're watching this on replay, drop your answers into the comment section. If you're a member of the Facebook group, let me know in there if Oxygen is something that you'd be interested in, because I want to find out what you guys want. That means that I can then create the content that you want to see. Okay, what else did I want to cover? Just bear with me a second. I'm going to quickly switch over to my other screens. Okay, there's one more thing I want to cover just very, very quickly, and I'm not going to go into too much detail about this because we're going to move on to some just questions and answers and so on. But how many people have ever taken a look at Wix? Oh, so it's going to be a little bit sick in my mouth there. How many people have actually ever taken a look at Wix? And how many people are testing out their new EditorX, which is a massive jump up from what they've done in the past? Yeah, exactly. Wix, more like, yeah, exactly. But have you seen EditorX? Because if you haven't, and you've ever taken a look at a tool like Webflow, you may well be surprised at how powerful this new editor looks. It's a complete difference to anything else you've seen before when it comes to Wix. So I'm going to quickly jump over because I've got a beta account on there. I'm going to quickly jump over and just show you some of the things that are in there. Now, I haven't used this much. I've just had a little look at it because I'm interested in these kinds of things. But let me just show you what's there. Okay, so much the same as you get when you open up a Brizy Cloud. You've got different accounts and things, or different sites and so on inside here. So I've already created a test site. And what I'm going to do is just going to show you what's actually inside here, because it's kind of crazy how much difference this is to what they've got in the past, you know, the whole Wix thing. And okay, so let me just have a little look-see. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit the site. I'm going to let the editor load up a second. And as I said before, my laptop connection for some reason is pretty slow, or it could just be my internet connection is playing a bit rubbish tonight. Either way, hopefully it'll come up on screen. There we go. So this is a test site. And as you can see, it probably looks a lot different to what you'd see when you're working with any kind of Wix site or any of those kinds of things. Like I said, I'm not thinking of doing things on Wix, so please don't think that. But I kind of like, I'm a nerd when it comes to this kind of thing. I like to see the technologies that are out there, and I like to try them out. And I'm sure there's lots of other people out there that's involved in this now and watching the replay that are the same as me. You just like to see these technologies and how things are moving on. But I think this is the thing that is quite an eye-opener when it comes to this, is how comprehensive this particular tool actually is. So I just added this little section in at the bottom. And it is a case of, you've got all these options on the top left-hand side. So you can add elements in, and there's a ton of different elements inside there. You can add in different layers. You can add in different masters. So you can create masters, which are basically templates, I believe, in the same kind of way as we are used to with the theme builder as part of Elementor. So you can have your site masters for your header and your footer and any other kind of aspects that you want. Your pages, excuse me. You've got your theme manager, which you can then control your global typography and things like that. You've also got the app market, which I haven't actually taken a look at, which obviously I'm assuming just has a marketplace for different people's apps and linking those into your website. And then you've got your content manager. So if you've ever used anything like Webflow in the past, this might be quite familiar to you. But I'm kind of excited to see that, you know, things like Wix are taken on board. They've got the simplicity side of things, but they're also seeing there's a marketplace to tap into in very much the same way as Webflow is doing. And I think this is kind of exciting because it does mean that if you've got people that want to create a business around something like this, and they don't want to go to the hassle and the time and all those kinds of things that you have when you're operating a WordPress-based website, you know, as in things like, you know, updates. Just take a look at what's going on at the moment to see what I'm talking about. I think something like this is exciting because I think it opens up possibilities and opportunities to create a more competitive market when you've got Webflow, when you've got this EditorX and any other kind of tools like that. So I'm excited to see where this goes. You know, have you tried this out? Is anybody ever considered doing something like this? I know I do apologize, Carl, that I mentioned the W word. I do apologize. But I think EditorX is totally different to Wix. I think it's something that's kind of an exciting technology that for me, I know how to play about with it. I want to see what it does. I don't know, same when it comes to Webflow. Like I've said in previous live streams, I don't want to restrict, and I don't recommend anybody that does this for a business restrict themselves to one technology without looking at what other things are out there, because you can pigeonhole yourself into one technology and then you put blinkers on and you won't see what's around you, whether that's a page builder, whether it's a platform like WordPress or anything else. There are options that if you are charging people money to build websites for them, part of your job is to look for the best solution for them, and WordPress isn't always the best solution for every single client. So always have your mind open to see what other options are out there, and look at things like Webflow, look at things like EditorX, look at these other tools that remove the reliance upon one single technology. And I'm going to leave it there. So let's just have a couple of minutes now, take 10 minutes, and we're going to go through and take a look at some of the questions and comments. So if you've got anything you'd like to say now, we're going to 10 minutes of going through those. So please pop those into the live chat, and I'll do my best to answer different things that's been sort of asked inside here. So, Josh Dre. My question, how would you recommend creating an Elementor directory where the users have to pay for their post types in a way where membership is directly tied to the custom post type? That's a good one. For the most part of that, I would say a tool like, depending upon how big it is, a tool like ACF, combine that to ACF Front-End Forms Pro. That should cover you for the membership side of things. You could charge them various different ways, but I would take a look at doing something like that, because I think that's a good starting point. It's got Stripe payment options. It's got PayPal payment options. But I know Shabti, the developer behind it, and I always reference Shabti because for some reason we always go back to his plugins. He's incredibly open to suggestions when it comes to expanding his tools, any problems, any faults like that. So if it doesn't do what you want it to do, I would say he's worth reaching out to. He's involved in the WP Tuts Facebook group. He's also involved in the ACF and Elementor Facebook group, two of which I would recommend joining up if you're not already members of. So reach out to Shabdi if it doesn't have the tools and facilities you want, and see if he'd have any way of integrating that into the future and giving you the tools that you want. But that's the kind of platform I would start off with. But you could also look at WP Front-End User Pro, I believe it is. There's a free version, but the Pro version gives you memberships, it gives you accounts, it gives you payment options, it gives you upload into the front end. So it should cover most, if not all, of the things that you would want. But I would say take a look at those two plugins, WP User Front-End Pro and also ACF Front-End Forms Pro. Take a look at those, Josh. Okay, David Stamper, where can I submit video requests? I have a specific idea and I want to see your take on it, if I could speak. Like I say, join up to the WP Tuts Facebook group. That's just wptuts.co.uk/Facebook. Join up to that, and then you can simply post in there if you've got any comments, questions, ideas, and so on. So just do that. That's the easiest way of getting in touch with me, because I monitor that every single day. Just tag me into the post and I can take a look at it. Okay. So we've got Pascal. Pure.net is great for any forms in Elementor. Pure.net is very good for forms in Elementor. They're just very slow to work with. I think if you could get the forms integration with Pure.net, with Jet Engine and those kinds of things, and you could get that to work in the same way that ACF Front-End Forms Pro works, I think you'd have a perfect combination, because ACF Front-End Forms Pro just makes the whole way of working with your typical sort of WordPress data, your WordPress metadata, as well as ACF metadata, very, very quick and easy. Whereas the other ones are a little bit slower to work with, and that's just a bit of a pain, to be honest. Will G, you recently asked a question in your Facebook group about pixels, M's, rems, etc. What you normally use for fully responsive websites. Also, are you thinking about doing a video on this in the future? I'm a little bit rubbish when it comes to this. I've predominantly used pixels for most things. Excuse me. But I do want to delve into working with more flexible ways. So using things like M's, rems, working with percentages and so on. So the reason I asked the question is because I'm working on a tutorial which is designing a landing page, and it's going to be a flexible design where it uses just various different layout techniques. And I was looking at how I could actually do that in the most flexible fashion possible. And this got me testing things like percentages, ems and rems, and so on. And then I started doing some research into it, and the whole ems and rems thing just screwed my brain up, because it's just like there's so many different takes on the same topic, and it just adds a huge level of confusion. So am I going to be doing a tutorial in the future? If I can wrap my head around it enough to be able to impart that in a simple fashion, so something that I can understand, that I can then impart to everybody else, yes, I will do. It really just comes down to whether I can actually wrap my head around it and understand it well enough to be confident that I can explain it well enough. Hope that makes sense. Okay, what else do we have? First of all, let me just say I'd love everybody to give a quick shout out to Carl Garside tonight. He's been absolutely fantastic over the last 3 live streams, helping me out in the comment section, helping me out in the live chat, I should say, answering questions, getting involved. So can everybody just say thank you very much to Carl? He's been invaluable. So thank you very much, Carl. Your help is amazing. And thank you so much for the support and effort that you give to the channel and also to these live streams. So big thumbs up to you, my good man. And if everybody else could just say thank you very much as well for his time and effort, that would be amazing. Okay, so let me just have a little look. I'm going to scroll up now. Bear with me, because this is scrolling down as I'm trying to scroll up. It just gets confusing. What have we got? Yes, I do apologize. I mentioned the W word Wix. Okay, so let's go back to Brian. He's got interested in Oxygen's integration with Gutenberg blocks. Interesting to see where they take it. I feel learning Elementor has given me a foundation to be able to handle Oxygen's learning curves. I think if you're used to working with a tool like Elementor or anything like that, you shouldn't find it too difficult to go over to a tool like Oxygen. Yes, there's going to be a learning curve because they use very different technologies, very different ways of working. But in much the same way, I think, as you can work with Jet Engine and ACF and Pods and probably Toolset as well. It's a tool, yeah, Toolset. They all have their nuances. They all have their ways of working that's different to the other. But once you understand the fundamental terminology that's being used and the way things are built and constructed, I think switching between them should be a much simpler affair. You know, once you understand meta fields and once you understand custom post types and all those kinds of things, switching between those different tools does make life a lot easier. So try it, test it out. I mean, I think there's a 30-day money back on this. If you try it and you don't like it, you can get your money back. Don't quote me on that. I think that's the case. But it might be something that resonates with you and you just find it is a perfect option moving forward. And like I say, you don't have to be exclusive to one of these page builders or one of these tools. You can use any combination that you want. Whatever works for you, whatever works for the client that you're working with, that's the right tool. But having your mind and your eyes open, in my opinion, is the right way to move forward. Okay, what else do I have on here? Yanis, a simple, huge question, ACF Pro or Jet Engine? I've answered that in its own dedicated video. But to preface that one, or to shrink that down into a very small bite-sized piece, there is no right or wrong option. There's just whatever works for that particular project. Each one has their strengths. Each one has their weaknesses. You just have to find out and scope out the project before you start it to see which you think is the right one for that job, and then use that particular tool. So I think Jet Engine is a very, very rounded platform. You can use Jet Engine on its own, or you can employ Jet Smart Filters and Jet Search with it, so 3 plugins basically, and you've got the entire tool set that you would need to build really comprehensive dynamic websites. Whereas with ACF, you then have to add in extra plugins, or you have to drop in the code for things like your custom post types and so on. So this is where I say it really comes down to what you want or what you need to do, what you need to achieve, and then look at what tool is the right one to achieve it. So I'm sorry I can't give you a definitive, this one is better than this one, because there is no this one is better than this one. It's just which is the right for the job. David Stamper. Thank you very much for the super chat, David. Again, like everybody else that's involved in tonight's live stream, you're all absolutely amazing. So thank you very much for your support. It's really, really means a lot. Okay, we're going to do 2 more questions, and then we're going to call tonight's live stream to an end, because I try to keep these to an hour, and other than the first one, I failed every other time. So, Carl, what do you say? Jet engine equals beginners or rounded ACF for advanced users? I think it depends on what you are looking to achieve with that sort of comment. I think if you don't want to be reliant upon a page builder, ACF is the best option there for that, because it has such a big sort of support network. It's got so many users. It's been updated regularly. It's just a very, very well-rounded tool. If you don't want to do that, though, you want to sort of work with page builders like, Elementor primarily, but you can use it with Beaver Builder, and you can with Divi, then, there's a difference there, because then you're kind of combining the tools together. So I would say ACF, by its very nature, if you don't want a page builder, is probably the better option. Obviously, Jet Engine, you have to use either Elementor or you have to use Gutenberg at this point in time. So I think it's a difficult one to answer, because I think everyone's got different opinions, different takes on it. So whichever you think is the right one for you. I'll donate to Paul's beer pocket money. Let's just say I'll get some beer in for next time. Okay. Ayush Pandit, big fan, sir. Thank you very much, and welcome to you, and hello, India. Thank you very much for stopping by. Okay. What have we got? SMS. Hang on, look at this. SMS. Okay, we'll ignore that, because these are 2 things I have no idea what we're talking about right now. I'm going to scroll back up and take a look at something prior to the Wix conversation where you weren't all trying to throw things at me. What else do we have? Okay, let's have a little look. Wow, there's so many comments on here. I didn't realize there was this many on there. Paul, have you ever checked before? I've already answered that one. Please bear with me as I go through these things, because there's so many here. Okay, I'm gonna leave those for now. We're just gonna close this down now. Okay, so Frank, very interested in Oxygen. I think a lot of people are interested in Oxygen, to be honest. I think it is one of those things that a lot of people have said, oh, I'm really frustrated with Elementor. I don't like the fact that 3 point so-and-so has caused me these problems. I'm going to look at Oxygen. And I can understand the frustration. Totally can. But we have to cut Elementor some slack at this point. I don't think they did this in the right fashion. They should have waited for WordPress 5.5 to have rolled out and settled down before they released it. But for the most part, let's be honest about it, we all use Elementor pretty regularly. And for the most part, it haven't been that much of a problem. Yes, there's bugs. Yes, there's quirks. Anything that has this many billions of combinations between plugins and themes and all those kinds of things, there's always going to be scope for problems. We have to be just understanding of that fact that there's no sort of fixed set of different things. It's not like an Apple ecosystem. It's like a PC ecosystem. There are so many combinations. So it's frustrating, absolutely frustrating. And this is why I would always say, please back up. Please do it on a staging site. Please wait for more than the first initial release of a major update before you update. Because if people had done that, there wouldn't have been so many really annoyed people. Problem is, if you look at it, Elementor's marketing is all about we're as simple to use as something like Wix. Problem is, you're not as simple as just something like Wix, because you're on a platform that is constantly changing with an ecosystem that is growing day by day. Wix is a closed platform like Apple, so they can control updates, architecture, software, and everything. So it's a completely different thing altogether, and by its very nature is open to issues and problems like we're seeing right now. But like I say, we do have to cut them some slack. We have to be sensible and logical when we're doing these kinds of things, when these new updates come out, to not rush out and be on the bleeding edge and then complain when things don't work because we didn't take the necessary precautions before we hit that update button. Let's just say we'll leave it at that. Josh, thank you very much, sir, for your super chat again tonight. That is absolutely amazing. Thank you so much. What's Josh's message? Thank you for all the help you provide on the community portal. We are really appreciative of what you do, your tutorials and more. Can't say thanks enough. Look, I will be brutally honest with you here that I started all this with a totally selfish reason, and that is that I like learning, and I just thought, well, if I'm learning something and I think it's interesting and useful, I'm going to create video tutorials on it, and I'm going to put them up there. And if other people like it, then it's a win-win. If nobody likes it, well, I've wasted a bit of my time. It's not the end of the world. So I got to be honest, I just enjoy doing it. It's something I love learning. I love experimenting, and sometimes the experiments work out well, and I create a video on it. Hence the deep dive videos. Sometimes those experiments fail miserably, and that's why you don't see a deep dive for quite a while. So thank you, Josh, and thank you to everybody else that's come back with amazing comments like this. It means the world to me. But like I say, I am kind of selfish. I do it because I love learning, and I just enjoy creating videos. So you're going to have to bear with me, and I'm sorry. I will keep creating them. Sorry. Okay. How to build a funnel professionally. What do you mean by professionally? Do you mean what tools you need to create a funnel and then you can sell it to a client? Or are you talking about something else? Let me know what you're talking about there, and I'll see if I can answer that question as one of the last ones, because that's quite a big in-depth sort of topic, but something I will be taking a look at in more detail over the coming months. Okay, what we got? Thanks again for the live stream and all your tutorials. Pascal, that's absolutely my pleasure. I'm glad you could make it over here from your comment on the Facebook group in Crocoblog, I believe, earlier on. So thank you very much for taking the time to come over and join us. It's much appreciated. Okay, so I'm going to quickly wait for that answer to my question, and then we're going to sort of wrap things up. How do you create a tracking page not using after? I'm afraid at this point in time, I don't, because I think these are going to be bigger, longer questions to answer. Elementor needs a visual CSS grid. I believe you can actually get plugins that will do that. I also believe that Happy Add-ons has it inside there, and it might be in the free version as well. Don't quote me. Have a look at Happy Add-ons. And if it's in the pro version, they are running a discount at the moment, which I believe runs out maybe in the next day or so. So take a look at Happy Add-ons, because I think that has the CSS grid inside there. How to get backlinks legally. That's a completely different topic, I think, and something that if you want to learn more about these kinds of things, like I said at the top of this video, head over to wptuts.co.uk/Facebook, join up to the Facebook group, leave your questions in there. I will create a thread after this live stream's ended. Put your questions inside there for the next live stream, which will be, I believe, on the 24th. I believe that's right. 2 weeks today. So please do leave your comments and your questions on that. I'll create a thread for the next live stream, so you can drop those in there, and we can then take a look at what's going to be used in the next live stream, so you can get your involvement from now. So like I say, join the Facebook group if you're already joined up. Put your comments and your questions inside there, or leave them in the comment section under this video if you're watching the replay or when it's finished and it goes live. Whatever method you want to use, let's get those questions in so I can take a look at having questions and answers in the next video to cover the things that you want me to cover. Okay, that's me stumbling on my words enough. I'm going to call it a night there, if you don't mind. We are already running 20 minutes over my allotted time. I want to say thank you so much to everybody that's been involved in the live stream tonight. Like I say, it means the world to me that you take the time out of your day to join me to talk all things to do with WordPress and Elementor, and we can whinge about things, and we can talk about things, and we can just chuck ideas around. I absolutely love it, and I hope you're enjoying these live streams as much as I am. Please get involved with the WP Tuts Facebook group. Leave your comments, your questions, and just become part of that ever-growing community. I'll be releasing videos again tomorrow. There'll be a new video out on how to launch a website to a client that covers all the things that I do when I finish my website and then I want to launch that with a client, all the different things that I do. So hopefully anybody that has a freelance business or considering becoming a freelancer or just has an interest in how to offload a site to a client once it's finished will enjoy that video. But I'm going to say thank you very much one more time, and I'm going to say at a quarter a night, I'm going to spend another 10 minutes now in the chat once I finish this. But thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you again in 2 weeks' time on the 24th of September. Look after yourself. Enjoy your drinks if you're having some. Drink sensibly. And I'll see you very, very soon.